2025. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Town Council. We will start with our agenda. Item number 1 is the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Cub Scout Pack number 70 to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all would come on up and present and lead us, and then we'll have a quick chat afterwards, okay? All right, so everybody please stand. And when you guys are ready, you can start us off, okay?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, just thank you for being here, guys. Why don't you tell us your names? Why don't you start up? Awesome. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Yeah, you can stand up.
Hudson.
All right, Hudson. Hi, Connor. Hi, Cooper. Hi. All right, thank you for being here. And I always do this. We have 2 Eagle Scouts on Town Council. One is actually here tonight. The other one unfortunately can't make it. So Eric.
Yep, I got my Eagle from Troop 70, which is where some of you may end up in the next year or 2 or 3. It's wonderful to see you all here. Thanks for coming and leading us in the pledge.
Awesome. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It's a great privilege. Thanks for serving, guys. All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on. We'll get the roll call.
Yes. Rita Bettino. Tom Butterworth.
Here.
Janet Fons. Here. Luke Kaufman. Mike Morrow.
Here.
Maria Norton. Here. Kimberly Norton.
Here.
Hillary Orman.
Here.
Christina Ross. Here. Eric Tunham.
Here.
Penny Young.
Here.
Jennifer Zonas.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Before we proceed to agenda item number 2, the minutes, I just wanted to take a brief moment to acknowledge the passing of Keith Ritchie. He's been a long-term community resident. He's been a real great contributor to the community. I knew him somewhat, and I just wanted to at least acknowledge his passing and the warmest prayers and thoughts to his family and friends at this time. And I actually had asked Eric Tunham to say a few words. So Eric?
Thanks, Mike. Also, my condolences to Marina and the family. It was quite a shock to hear the news. Keith Ritchie was a member of the New Canaan Exchange Club for 33 years. I think that's about as long as the Exchange Club has been in New Canaan. And he had a volunteer spirit that inspired others. And it was good to know him and to be his friend. He had a great big smile and always a helping hand. He spent 21 years on the parking commission in this town. That's a long time for anybody on anything. He spent the last 4.5 years of his life on Parks and Recreation. So his volunteering has extended beyond things like the New Canaan Dance Club and the New Canaan Men's Club. To really serving his community. He ran for town council twice and was not elected, but continued to serve and to serve and to serve. And so it was my pleasure to know him. He was a very accomplished and capable gentleman, an international tax lawyer for firms like ExxonMobil, Citibank, and Xerox. In one of his runs for town council, he's quoted as saying, "I am most fortunate to have been blessed with a wonderful family, good health, a high energy level, and a rewarding career." And we are the beneficiaries of his rewarding volunteer spirit. And it's with a heavy heart that we pass along this news to anyone watching. And our hearts go out to his family.
Thank you, Eric. If we just have a quick moment of silence, I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you all, and thank you. Okay, moving along. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2, minutes, approval of the minutes for the regular meeting held on April 23, 2025. Can we get a motion and we'll open up for discussion? Janet, all right, nice. Janet made the motion.
Made the motion.
All right, Christina second, and we will now open up discussion. Any edits, anybody to the minutes of April 23?
I hate being the curmudgeon on these.
Tom, if you didn't, I think
all the
something's
time.
wrong.
Right. There was at least one page that I couldn't read, the way it
Oh.
was reflected on, the way it was copied into the computer. I just couldn't read. So there was a nonsensical sentence that I'm sure made a lot of sense if I could have found all the words to it. So I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, so we could either defer, delay, table. You could abstain if you're not comfortable voting. You know. Okay, so my preference is to just move it along, and
Yeah.
I think it's if there are no other edits.
Can you email the edits?
I can't edit it because I
You
can't
can't
see all
read
the
it.
words. It's
Okay.
not reproduced. Not all the words are reproduced on the tablet.
Okay,
All right, so we'll just vote on the motion, and so let's just do that. So all in favor of approving the meeting minutes for the regular meeting held on April 23, 2025, all in favor? Okay, so we'll have to do a roll call.
okay. Tom Butterworth,
No.
Janet Fons,
Yes.
Lou Kaufman, Mike Morrow,
Yes.
Leah Norton,
Yes.
Kimberly Norton,
Yes.
Hillary Orman,
Yes.
Christina Ross, yes. Eric Tunum,
Yes.
Penny Young,
Yes.
Jennifer Zonas.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
motion-
also here.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
Rita.
Oh, hi,
Sorry,
Rita.
I came in a little late.
Do you approve the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So the motion passes. The meeting minutes have been approved. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, public comments. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the town council on agenda topics scheduled for review and/or vote. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address, and comments will be limited to 2 to 3 minutes, subject to the total number of speakers. Do we have any speakers here or online? Anybody online? No? All right, moving along. Next up, agenda item number 4, Carriage Barn Courtyard Renovation Project. Approval of the Carriage Barn Courtyard Renovation Project, as well as the statutory lien filed by the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, DECD, and the Town of New Canaan. 15 minutes, Greg Riley, Tiger Man, Hillary Whitman. Floor is yours.
Good evening, council.
Hello, Greg.
Tiger Man is here. Is Hillary Whitman with us?
I am here. I don't know, my
Okay, so-
video's not starting for some reason, but I'm here.
Okay. So I will simply explain why we are here and then turn it over to Tiger and Hillary for much of the presentation. So Hillary Whitman, as you may know, is the executive director of New Canaan Society for the Arts, which does business as the Carriage Barn Arts Center. And she applied for and was awarded a Good to Great grant from Connecticut Humanities and Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development to improve town property. I'm helping to manage the grant on behalf of the town because it relates to town property. And so we're here to satisfy the rules of the town, which, as you may know, there's an amendment in the town code that says when town property is improved, the town council must approve the project, construction of a project to improve town property. So this is a town improvement, and so that's why we're here to have you approve the project. So Hillary and Tiger can talk specifically about the project, and I can fill in with any information related to the grant.
Okay. I can start with just a little bit of background on the grant application and the project that we applied for. So in June of 2023, we were one of 34 organizations in the state that was awarded a Good to Great grant. And as we said, it was awarded from the Department of Economic and Community Development together with the Connecticut Humanities. And this grant was intended to fund capital projects for nonprofit arts, cultural, and history organizations in the state that would enhance the visitor experience. So we applied for and were awarded $128,000 grant to complete our outdoor courtyard enhancement and creating an active arts hub in that outdoor courtyard area. So the intention was to use these funds to renovate and enhance this 1,500 square foot space. It really serves as the main entrance to the carriage barn and the link between the Art Center and Waveney Park and, you know, any visitors who are coming to the carriage barn. While the existing courtyard is occasionally used, it really has many limitations that that really prohibit it from, you know, being a functional space, such as the gravel surface, the lack of lighting, no electrical outlets. So in the process of applying for this, we, you know, worked with the town and with Tiger and his team to put a proposal together. And the plan is to replace the surface, the unstable gravel surface, with a solid, you know, stone surface in that space. Install lighting that could be used for after hours programs and events, a sound system that could be used for live performances and presentations, outdoor furnishings for gatherings and performances, and also some landscape enhancements. And just a little background, as some of you may know, but in the end of 2021, we completed another renovation project that we worked on together with the town that added a multi-purpose sort of classroom space to the carriage barn. We renovated our restroom facilities to be ADA compliant. We also last year renovated the kitchen in the carriage barn space. So we've really done a lot in the space that has made it just a really vibrant and, you know, much more used venue for the town. So we really just want to, you know, the goal of this was to keep that momentum growing and just, you know, create more spaces that can be used for the kinds of programming that we're producing there. And I'll just turn it over to Tiger to talk a little more in specific detail about what this plan is that's on the screen.
Can I just interrupt for a minute? Do the drawing that's on the screen, do we have a copy? I don't see that on our tablets. Do we have a copy of that?
We don't have another tablet.
Can we get one?
Yeah, we can certainly provide that to you. I apologize if that wasn't part of the package. It was
Okay.
part of the selectmen's package, but I think we missed on getting you this plan itself. We did review it today with the infrastructure committee this morning. But I'll send you this. It's a 3-plan set or 3 sheets for the plan set. And it basically talks about what Hillary just talked about, which is the patio reconstruction for to make it a bluestone patio. We're trying to make everything a little bit more uniform. So we've got a nice bluestone walkway that we have partnered with the Conservancy on behind the Waveney house itself and around the fountain. And then the thought is that when we're renovating the powerhouse, when that comes forward, that'll be a bluestone patio as well. And then we hired the exact same architect, landscape architect, who worked on that project to work on the carriage barn project to give us the exact same type of feel. And the thought is to then do the exact same thing over at the carriage barn. Only the carriage barn actually is a little augmented a little bit, because since it was a carriage barn, we're going to put in 2 differing sets of stone to signify basically the carriage path into the carriage barn. So it looks like, so it's kind of a nod to history to show you your walk into the barn. So this rutted path, or to signify or symbolize a rutted path. But basically the work is for the exterior patio, as she said, the sound improvements, the lighting, drainage improvements. We've had concerns about drainage and water coming up to the building itself, and then we repointed the structure, but we still have concerns in the basement area from water pressing up against the building. So we have drainage being installed, and then we have the green spaces around the carriage barn and across the street next to the parking area are all being re-landscaped. Right now, they're a little I guess you would call them, that we let them naturalize and basically grow in, and not kind of keep them in a landscaped sense, in a more manicured sense. But this will be cleaning all that area out across from the parking area, and then replanting that, and then helping with plantings and a new fence between the carriage barn and the powerhouse. Right now, the fence that's there is it's beige, it's plastic, it's not necessarily in what's keeping with the town itself and keeping with Waveney. So we're going with a much more aesthetically pleasing fence, which then has a direct tie-in to the bridges and the boardwalks down at the Anderson Pond and along the trail system coming in off of South Avenue. So the same type of look for that fence is the same type of look that we have on the bridges coming into Waveney that we work with on the Conservancy side, and the bridges and the fencing that is down by the Anderson Pond that we work with the Conservancy on. Again, same landscape architect looking at the view, so we have a more holistic view of the park itself. And Hillary was kind because while we partnered with her on the renovation for portion of the building, as far as the bathrooms and what have you, the kitchen was funded solely by the Carriage Barn Arts Center. So
New Canaan Community Foundation
there you go.
contributed.
So
towards
she's
that,
she's ahead of us on the curve there, as far as the amount of money spent on the structure and inside the structure. So I just wanted that clarification that while we did work with them on that, since it's our building, they funded that entirely. So which was welcome. So I don't know if you have other questions. We also have, as she mentioned, lighting improvements in the patio, and then we have lighting improvements on the walkway and the area surrounding the Carriage Barn as well as part of this project. And then as we walk up the stairs and into the park proper, you've already funded a separate project for lighting enhancements there. The phase 2 was funded in this year's budget for DPW, and that project is actually underway. So overall, I think it's a very nice look, and it'll be a very nice add. It is some of the work we would have had to do anyways, because the gravel courtyard was necessarily non-compliant. You want to have a slip resistant and firm and stable surface for ADA compliance, and the gravel stone that we had out there, while it was nice and it was somewhat stable and firm, it wasn't necessarily slip resistant for some of the elderly patrons of the Carriage Barn, or some of the more infirm patrons that would come by, and we don't want to see anyone slip, trip, or fall in the area. So this work will actually take care of some of the work that we would have had to do anyways. And Hillary was great enough to go out and get a grant to take care of that for us, so we don't have to pay for it directly. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
So the preliminary, the footprint of the patio remains the same with that stone wall?
That's correct. We're staying within the stone wall. And then that patio will stay the exact same. It's staying within the bounds of that stone wall. We already repointed that wall last year, so we've already done that work itself. We wanted to do that first before we actually started to work on the patio, because we didn't want any stones falling on it or any masonry falling on it when we went in to go do the work. So the town already took care of that portion. So, but yes, the patio will stay within the bounds of in the confines of the existing stone wall.
I have a question. How much is it going to cost? How much is the grant, and is the town contributing? And my second question is, when will the work take place and how long will it take?
I
Great
can address
question.
the first part of that.
Okay.
You want to take that, Greg, or you want me to?
Let me address the numbers, Tiger, and then
Have
you
at
can
it.
talk about the timing.
Yep.
The total project is, let's see, well, I'll start with the grant. The grant really initiated the project, $128,000. There's a 20% match required. That gets added to the 128. So the 20% match is $25,600. That is going to be split between the town and the Carriage Barn. So that's $12,800 from the town, $12,800 from the Carriage Barn. So the 128 grant plus the 20% of 25,600 makes the total project 153,600.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, and then as far as timing goes, pending your approval here of the work, we have to finalize the specifications. The technical specifications are complete. The front end contractual specifications as it pertains to the grant and our work with the DECD. There's certain aspects of that grant that they want inserted into the specifications. We'll finalize those specifications, send it back to them for approval, and then it'll go out onto the street. Should only take about 3-4 weeks for a bid to come back or bids to come back, and then the overall work 4 to 6 weeks, depending upon lead time of the fixtures and the sound fixtures. But the majority of them are readily available, so we don't anticipate it being that long of a time frame to complete in its entirety.
So how will people use the carriage house while that's being done?
The part of our specification always has that there's access for whoever might be utilizing the facility itself. So we'll work with Hillary on timing as far as if she's got major events or, specific showings, things of that nature. But the majority of the work will be done during the day, and then she'll have the evenings and the weekends to work on it. And if anyone needs to get in, the contractor is responsible to make sure that access is always available for her and her staff, or for any patrons that need to go into the carriage barn. And the beauty of it is that the majority of the work is outside, and while there might be some noise, the majority of it is not that loud. That needs to be constructed, and we don't necessarily need to go into the building for anything to take them out of service.
Maria?
I'm wondering, is it a lot more light than what's currently there? And also, is there outside speakers? Are there outside speakers currently?
No, there are currently no outdoor speakers. There are no outdoor outlets that are working. The lighting there is some lighting that is very unattractive, kind of fluorescent fixtures that are probably, I don't know, 40 or 50 years old. And they're not, it's very dark in the winter. At 4 or 5 o'clock, it's very, very dark out there. So that will be a much needed and welcome improvement.
Right. We're not looking to blast into space, so to speak. Most of it is very subdued lighting. A lot of it is uplighting along the walls to actually illuminate the walls and utilize the walls as a backdrop. So the overall thought is to make it a very nice and inviting space, but to actually have light so that you can actually function outdoors, but nothing that would make it where it would be where any other person or any other portion that might be working, say, if they were having an event at the Powerhouse or an event up at Waveney House, whereby the sound or the lighting would be obtrusive to those areas. And she's already had events at the exact same time that events were in the house, and we haven't had a concern or a complaint of multiple events at multiple times.
So is the idea to have more outdoor or events that can spread to the outdoor with the speakers and?
Yeah, the plan is to use that space more, whether it's outdoor art and music classes, educational programs, evening concerts maybe in the summer months, plein air painting events. We could have sculpture installations there, and also signage and programs there that when the art center itself is not open, that visitors to the park can learn a little more about, what is happening inside, or showcase some of our artists, with outdoor installations in that space. So it's not all about sort of live music, but just using that space in a way that that more people can, be connected to what's happening at what the Carriage Barn Arts Center is all about, and sort of what goes on inside to draw them in.
Yeah, I
It's
was
an
just
excellent
wondering.
space. It's just underutilized.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm just wondering if there's concert or, performances going on there, how late can they go? Or parties, right? Someone could rent it and,
Mhm.
and theoretically, but it
Yeah.
could move more outside than where it was more inside before.
Yeah, and that currently happens occasionally. And we, we always follow all the same guidelines at the park, which is that, the 11 p.m. curfew and, making sure everything is done and they're sort of out of there by 11 o'clock. And we also, always coordinate pretty closely with the Powerhouse Theater as well in terms of their programming. We each kind of make sure we're in communication on any, major events.
If I may add, Hillary and Tiger, that we were curious to know if P and Z needed to weigh in on this. And Sarah Carey said no. She said that administrative approvals were okay in this case. And so she analyzed the general plan and okayed it. She analyzed and specifically the lighting and the sound, and she okayed it on an administrative basis.
I've got a question.
Eric and Christina.
The $12,000, the $12,800 from the town comes from which year's budget and where in the budget? I'm just curious.
Tiger?
That came from my professional services. And we contracted with the designer who put together this plan. So the majority of it's already been taken care of in a previous fiscal year.
Thanks.
So to Tiger's comment right now and just in general, the total approval budget is 153,600, but there's no contingency. That's the total project cost. If it were to go beyond that, the town has stated that they're not going to go beyond the 10% of the original grant amount, that it would have to be paid by the nonprofit, or the project would have to be cut back or something like that. But I forgot the other second point I wanted to make. So that's it.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions, comments?
No. Okay. Do you want me to make the motion? Did we make the
It's
motion?
up to you. We haven't made it, but do you want to make
Oh,
it?
Any further discussion before? I'll make the motion.
All right.
So I move we approve the Carriage Barn Courtyard renovation project as well as the statutory lien filed by the state of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, DECD, and the town of New Canaan.
Well, all in favor?
Any second?
Second.
Mike?
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Everybody out there in TV land, motion passes unanimously. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hillary,
Thank you.
Tiger,
Excited
Craig,
to
and
see it.
everybody.
Yeah, it does
Thank
get dark out there.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you.
Next up is agenda item number 5, cash management and interest income. Update on earned interest income and investment strategies, 10 minutes, and Kelly Lentz and Andrew Brooks, talking to myself. Get
I'm
up
listening.
here.
I'm listening to you.
Thank you. Let's do
Can I have an
some of it. Yeah, go right ahead. All right, Andrew. It's been a while. Make sure you pull that close to you so everyone can hear.
Greg, that was
There you
like
go.
the best acoustics I feel like
Yeah.
I've heard on the mic.
Yeah,
that
me
you
too.
Spoke incredibly well, and it was projected very well.
Very stentorian, very
Yeah, I was-
stentorian.
I was like, that's
Mhm.
great. I can
We're
hear-
proud of you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. Before I start, I just also want to acknowledge Keith Ritchie's passing, and he's someone I just recently had a very lengthy discussion with, and it's just shocking how something like that can happen so suddenly.
Speak
So
into your mic so that
Yeah.
it gets picked up. 'Cause
Greg?
It's not.
Yeah.
so I just want to, it is on. So I just want to echo Eric's thoughts about, his contributions to the town and his sudden passing, and, his family is in my thoughts and prayers. So just to kick off a quick update, because I think I haven't been back here since November or December. So I wanted to just share an update around where we stand with our cash and our investments. And so what I'm showing on the screen right now is just a chart of the Fed funds rate. and it's been very stable the last few meetings of the Fed. Part of that is because inflation has come down substantially, but with some of the new tariff policy, there are uncertainties looming. And so I think they're being extra cautious, which has been good for us because we've been able to enjoy the fruits of having elevated interest rates a lot longer than we had originally anticipated and had budgeted for. And so at the next Fed meeting, the most recent one, they kept them flat. The next meeting is in June 18th. And it's also 96% odds based on what the odds makers are saying that they're going to keep it flat for another month. So I just wanted to give that as kind of a backdrop to these numbers and provide some context for why we are earning more, or one of the reasons why we're earning more than we, I think, had originally projected. So what I have here is on the top row is fiscal year 25, the current fiscal year, which began in July of 2024. And we have numbers through April because we're currently in May. So we'll have the May numbers in at the end of this month. And then I have fiscal 24 underneath it, just so you can kind of see a comparison. And I will email this out to everyone after the meeting. But I can zoom in a little bit. So we're currently just shy of the $2 million general fund interest projection that we had put into the budget for the current fiscal year. So we're just a little over, or a little under $15,000 away from hitting what we had budgeted. So we're going to go above and beyond that number, which is great news. So we will, we anticipate again the rates to stay the same. We do tend to have lower balances, though, cash balances, as we near the end of the fiscal year because the next tax collection begins in July. So obviously, when you have smaller balances, you are not going to earn as much money on those lower balances. But again, I'm confident we're going to easily surpass the 2 million, probably end up around 2.3 million altogether in general fund dollars. And then the other line here, we also earn interest on other funds like our sewer fund. We have a grants fund. We have capital projects as well, like our capital projects account. The interest on that account has actually gone way up compared to earlier months because we did a bond issue back in March. And so with that bond issuance, we put the proceeds of that bond sale into our capital projects accounts. And now we're earning more money on that. Although a lot of that money is to reimburse the town for the police station. Because we started paying for that project out of our reserves. And then once we had a final understanding of what that would cost, we then went out and bonded for most of it. And then just to give a quick breakdown of our investments, because as you can see here, we do have in Janney and UBS are two broker dealers that we trade with. As of the end of the month, we had a little over 14 million with Janney and a little over 27 million or almost 28 million with UBS. So I gave a little breakdown of our portfolios there. You'll see that by and large, over 70% of the portfolios at both broker dealers are treasuries, because again, that's where the yield is currently versus CDs. Some of these, small, the 3.9% in CDs, some of those were purchased, a year or more ago when those rates were better than the treasury rates at the time. But we are still enjoying elevated rates on a lot of those. So altogether, we have about 75 million in total cash or securities on hand at this point. And again, if we needed to liquidate our securities for any reason, unexpected, expense that comes up, we obviously have a lot that we have to work with, and we've built this up over time. So we are in a very good cash position overall. I think that's pretty much the crux of it. I know that,
Andrew, we're going to just throw questions at you as you go because you can handle that. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Just a quick question on the treasuries. Is there
Mhm.
any thought or prediction about where those might go as far as the returns go on those with the bond rating going down for US treasuries? Is there any thought to diversifying that a little bit more? Or
Oh, you're talking about the recent
Yeah.
downgrade. So you know, I don't,
Or are they still enjoying a high enough return that we would keep it at like 79%?
right. They are still the best avenue for earning the most interest and also the safest. And even though it's even with a slight downgrade, it still is incredibly safe to invest in U.S. Treasuries, and they are backed by the full faith and credit of the federal government. So I would say probably not going to change the mix too much there. Again, a lot safer to own a treasury than to have too much money in a unsecured bank account where you have FDIC insurance limits of $250,000. Now, the good news is with our Webster accounts, we have collateralization agreements where all of those funds are 100% collateralized, meaning the bank holds in another account in trust in New Canaan's name a parallel portfolio that if they were to go under, the same value of dollars that we have in our bank accounts would be reimbursed to us. So effectively, those are fully safe insured accounts. The other thing I'll mention too, I included the current interest rates we're earning. Obviously, Janney and UBS, depending on the specific security, you're going to have a different yield, right? A lot of the treasuries that I've been buying over the past 6 months are typically yielding 4.2, 4.3%. Some of the older ones that we have that I bought when rates were at 5% are still yielding that higher level. But as you can see with bank accounts, like money market accounts, those can adjust and fluctuate. We did negotiate high interest rates or higher than what you can get on the street interest rates with Webster because we've had a very long relationship with them. We do all of our transactions primarily through them, or most of them through them. So because of that leverage we have, being a very large account with them, they've agreed to give us as close to the Fed funds rate as possible. So as of right now, the Fed funds rate is 4.33, right? So we're earning 4.21, 4.19, 4.2. So we're just shy of that Fed funds rate. And that's kind of rare to get from a bank directly. But again, because of our negotiations, because we want to keep that cash there to pay our bills timely versus having to wire money back and forth, it certainly saves, I think, the finance department a headache of having to go recoup funds from one entity and transfer them to go pay a bill. So we do try to take advantage of those heightened rates, but when there are treasuries that are even higher than that, then I try to chase that yield.
Right. Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does the 2 million compare to last year? You said we earned 2 million. I was just curious.
Yeah. So last year, we earned a total of 2.5 million in interest, of which 2.1 million was on general fund dollars.
Yeah.
And then almost 400,000 were the other funds I mentioned, like the sewer fund, grant fund, and capital projects fund. So again, I think we're going to potentially exceed, even on the general fund side, the interest we earned last year, which is interesting because rates at various points last year were even higher than they are today. I think some of that too is working with the finance department. We've been able to optimize getting more cash parked in higher yielding accounts or securities versus keeping them in, our pooled cash checking account. So now the balance in the pooled cash account has been kept much lower, which is good because that account only earns 1.6%, right? And so instead we've been keeping a lot of that cash in higher yielding accounts or securities. So that's why even with slightly lower rates, we've been able to match essentially what we were doing last year.
That's great. Now, do we have to pay taxes, capital gains on this, or because we're a municipality, we're exempt?
Right, because we're a public entity, we are exempt from any taxation at the federal or state level.
Right.
So we get to.
The only thing, Andrew, we should add is just as Andrew mentioned, our capital, we bonded 35 million. We bonded the whole thing for the police station, and then we pay back the general fund. The money that the police station's using right now as we pay off the rest of the bills, we have to watch for arbitrage. So even though the rates could be at 4, we have to keep it below the rates of what we're paying as a tax exempt bond. So they're around 3% or so in aggregate. So we actually have to ask the bank to make sure that our rates are below that for those funds, because that would trigger arbitrage for us.
Right.
Right. The town is not allowed to essentially profit off of that interest rate spread. And that's why you'll see for the Chase Capital Projects account, it's at 2.3%. So it's intentionally set lower so that we avoid that arbitrage issue.
Right. Thank you.
If there was a Fed cut, where we're going to get yield from? What happens to our portfolio then?
So certainly we will earn likely a little bit less interest. Some of the money, or a decent amount of the money at Janney and UBS, is actually parked in a pretty long-term horizon, like 2 years. So we have been able to lock in, current rates going out quite a bit. But we do have money also in shorter term because we're going to need it to pay a bill down the road, in the near future. So obviously, when we get new tax dollars in July, right, if rates come down, then that will mean we're probably not going to earn as much on those funds. But for the next budget year, we put in a $1.8 million revenue projection from interest and income from investments. And again, that's to account for likely Fed rate cuts.
Right.
But so far, based on the projection I'd made a few months ago during the budget season, they have not come down as quickly as I had originally anticipated, and I think a lot of people anticipated. So I think we're actually likely in a position to still exceed our budgeted revenue amount for fiscal 26. I know it's
Projections are pretty conservative. That's
Right.
fine.
I was being extra conservative in our projections and thinking the Fed funds rate might drop, even as low as 3.25% by this time next year. But I'm not sure if we're going to see that in reality. So we'll hopefully still exceed that 1.8 million in the next fiscal year.
So Janet, just to give you kind of an overview of like just the back. So in our general fund, which is the main one, we look at our fund balance is around $27 million. We've 20 million of that, as Andrew said, that's invested long-term, more long-term. So we never touch that one. We have about 20 million that because of tax on the float, we actually put that out. We put it out every 6 months after each tax season, and then we have to draw it back. This year, at this point this year, we'd already drawn 10 million back last year. We haven't because we're trying to keep the minimum amount in the account and most in our money markets for the cash flow. But because we reimbursed ourselves for the police station, because that from a reimbursement standpoint in the capital, we drained a lot of our general fund. So we have this 20 million that I'll probably in June, our run rate's 12 million. We've got 14 million left in the money market. So I'll be asking for it, but we've kept that money in longer than we have before. I normally would have taken 10 back. So
Right.
by the end of June, we'll probably be in the $6 million marker in the general fund holding because we've 20 million out all the time. And our fund balance is only about $27 million. So that's the float that we have as Andrew talks. We give that back to him at the end of each tax season.
Thanks, Ann.
Yep.
Actually, in looking at some of the securities that are about to come or mature in July and August, some of those were purchased 2 years ago at heightened rates. So we're actually going to see a windfall from that coming, maturing into our account. So, but that income will be realized for fiscal 26 because it's going to be after June 30th of this year.
Nice.
So that will also help pad that revenue projection a bit too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Christina?
I'd just like to say, since you took over as treasurer, you have transformed this position. And we never talked about millions of dollars being made as interest by the town on any of the accounts. So kudos to you. You've done an unbelievable job.
Thank you. Takes a team. So appreciate everyone's support and
And Anna as well. I mean, the way you explain things.
and has, compared to, we've had a number of finance directors in the 12 years that I've been doing this. But for, when Ann came on board, we were able to figure out a way to get more money parked in investments as she was describing. And that has, I think, also helped us get those returns because I can't unilaterally move money, right? It requires a team and partnership and collaboration to do that. So we were able to figure out what our, the $12 million run rate a month, right? Doing a cash flow projection, figuring out, okay, what do we need to keep liquid? What can we actually sock away in a longer term investment to earn more money? So, so I'm very happy with the results.
Excellent, Andrew. Very impressive as usual. Seriously, we're in great hands, both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if that's it, thank you. Thank you for coming
Thank you so
down
much.
and keep up the great work. Peacock. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 6, charter review discussion. Discussion and general overview of charter revision process. So I have this for 20 minutes, Tom Butterworth and Hillary Orman. We'll go past 20. I'd like to have a very nice, robust discussion, give everybody an opportunity to listen, ask questions and all that. Obviously, though, we keep everything within some bounds of reasonableness, but I am happy that, Tom, you initiated getting this onto the agenda. I think it's a really great discussion we need to be having. So I wanted to say thank you to you and Hillary. And well, one of the other things too, just about how we'll proceed here. So the public is aware, we did receive an excellent deck to our email accounts, which is really just fantastic. And I had urged the town council to review it prior to tonight so we can have a more thoughtful and expeditious discussion. As usual, and like the model we handle at the budget season, which is, we typically, although this is a little different, I don't think it's always that productive to just go page by page and have a presenter read each page of a deck. So I'm happy to go through, I think, any key points just to keep the discussion flowing. But like I said, we want to have a full discussion and everyone have an opportunity to chat and ask questions. This is a real serious critical issue for our town. So with that said, I will turn it over to our esteemed panel. Oh, great. Thank you.
Decade. Anyway, as you all hopefully been reading your materials, what we instituted in the last charter was a statement about frequency of reviewing.
Penny, would you mind just using the mic? It's.
And it's not going, there it is.
Pull it close,
I
please.
know, he was trying to get it to go and wouldn't go.
Yeah. Just pull it
Anyway,
close.
so in the last, at the end of the last charter, we actually did put a statement in the charter about reviewing it. And it states on and before November 8th of 2026, or at least every 10 years thereafter, the town council shall consider and act upon a resolution calling for the establishment of a charter revision commission to review and, if necessary, amend the charter. The process of initiating the Charter Revision Commission shall be governed by Section 7-188 of the General Statutes. So even though there is a statement in the charter, we do not have to have a Charter Revision Commission. It is all based upon the council findings or acknowledging findings that would necessitate a more immediate review of them. So this is just an announcement to the council that the process is going to go forward of you all deciding whether or not there are issues that warrant forming a whole commission. It is a process that is governed by the general statutes in Hartford. And it is very, very, very specific as to what you do, when, how long, what kind of reporting, how many public hearings you have to have. Essentially, it takes about 16 months from start to finish to accomplish it. When we did the charter revision last time, it was about this kind of time in the calendar that we started the discussion, appointed a committee that was instituted in October, and then the committee went to work. It is a very thorough, in-depth study of the issues, all well documented as to what the commission's findings are. And then they, after their discussions, will make some decisions as to whether or not it is worthy of bringing issues to the electorate to vote upon. Last time there were 5 issues. And when you look through the list of all the different topics that could, or, it could generate more discussion, they picked the ones that actually had the most import from a timely basis to actually bring before the public. And of the 5 issues, 4 were approved unanimously with, or not unanimously, just a healthy vote. And then 1 didn't make it through and could be reviewed again. So we've had revisions in when it was started in 1965, amended in 74, 75, 81, and then we get all the way to 2005 before there's another study. And so when the council looked at what had been done in 2005 and the list of topics that rose to everybody's cognition, said, that's 10 years, let's get with it, and formed a committee and did it. So I will pass it on then to Dave and Kathleen, who are also on the commission. We have kind of merged all of our notes together, and Kathleen very artistically and thoroughly has summarized for you all.
Thank you, Penny.
Just one little addition to what Penny said about the votes. It was interesting, the yes votes went 68, 33, 61, 73, 86. So there's quite a bit of variation. And the point is that the electorate actually paid some attention. You never know.
You want me to?
Sure. Oh, you want me to go?
keep
Yeah.
going.
Okay, so
I've got, if I could just interrupt for a moment, I've got what might be a dumb question. The town charter is basically a document that says how the town is going to be run.
Yes.
you could analogize it, Eric, to Constitution.
Right.
As opposed to the ordinances being the body of laws.
What amazes me is that the first one was written in 1965.
Right.
That's, what did we do before then?
Earlier, even earlier, there was a town statute, and there's a link provided to that going back to 1935.
Yeah.
But the official charter, if you will, was established in 1965.
Is
So
that pretty late for municipalities either in this state or
Um,
across the country?
having a governing document, I think it goes back to 1935 when
Yeah.
this was first established by the General Assembly. And then the official charter got underway
Okay.
in
I wasn't
1965.
there.
Yep,
Sometime then we were a town meeting, not a
that's right.
legislative body.
I think it was in 1971 that it changed over and that was when the charter was revised.
The state really does get into the weeds on what you can and can't do and when you can and can't do it or must do it. And some of the things in our charter we could not necessarily do today. We were in effect grandfathered by an earlier aspect. The one that I might be incorrect, but I believe the one that's in there that we probably couldn't do if we were starting fresh is to have an appointed Board of Finance. For what it's worth.
Because currently it's at the state level is mandated that it's elected in.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Many of them are.
Yeah, many of them are in other towns. I mean, the feeling in this environment, certainly when we went through the process, was quite strongly in favor of retaining what we have. But in many towns, it is elected. And I think as I said, I think if we were starting fresh, we probably couldn't retain that.
So the way that the statutes are worded, and Hillary, you can correct me, is that unless the charter in your town says otherwise, you have to update it or create it the same way that the statutes identify the Board of Finance. But if the charter says, if the charter specifically says that it'll be appointed, then you don't have to change it and abide because it came first.
Yeah, but the ability to do that may require that it was in the charter
Yeah.
at an early point in time.
Okay, Kathleen.
Davis.
Yeah, so, in this presentation, it mentions the members of the committee, commission, and there is a requirement that no more than a third could be holding office. We had two people holding office, Penny and Kathleen. And I thought that was quite helpful. It worked well to have understanding of town council and local government for several of us who were not otherwise part of that. I also thought it was helpful to only have two. And it was also helpful to avoid any sense of partisanship. And I think that was totally done. I don't think there was any issue at all about that. But the statute requires that you have no more than a bare majority. If we have 11 people, six of one party and 5 of the other. That was what we started out with, actually, but John Hetherington, who had been intended to be and started serving as the chair, had some serious health issues and basically had to resign. So we ended up with 10 people, and it was 6R and 4D, but the behavior in the room was 10 ends, if you will. I mean, so we did a lot of research.
Yeah, maybe if I could just very briefly, and interrupt me with any questions, I'm going to just quickly talk about the commission process. I'm going to talk about the report to the town council and then the outcome. And again, just interrupt anything. I'll be brief because I'm going to assume that you had an opportunity to read the materials that are there. There are lots of links to the report. So very quickly, as the commission was first convened, and we were sworn in September of 2015, we quickly got underway with the research process. So we formed study groups of 2 members each. We sort of tried to balance it between party. So we had a Democrat and a Republican working together, but again, it was not really necessary per se, but that's how we originally started. We met with and interviewed 85 individuals, from members of town departments to members of boards and commissions to citizens, the League of Women Voters, et cetera. Everybody who wanted to weigh in on their view or the entirety of the charter was free to do so. Once doing that, and we pretty much came together and 14 meetings and then reviewed all of this material. We went through all 22 articles within the charter word by word. And in some cases, we've identified, and we have a list here of the items that came up as part of these interviews. We researched them all. We took a look at other municipalities in terms of what they might have done in any particular case. And we debated them. And you'll see in just a second, I mean, some of them were, they raised a lot of questions. And ultimately, it's the electorate who makes the decision. It's really not the commission or the town council or anybody. It's the electorate who will actually vote. And as Dave mentioned, the results were pretty outstanding in terms of what they came up with. So we came back after reviewing each of those articles and made our recommendations. We made the recommendations to the town council. Town council made a couple of additions and changes. One example is, for instance, the Conservation Commission had just been developed. And so it wasn't in the charter at that time. And the town council said, let's put it in. So that's one example of kind of the feedback back and forth. We then sat down and decided how the votes should look on the ballot. And as Penny mentioned, there were 5 actual votes. I'm going to jump ahead. If you guys have this presentation, I'm sorry, I'm not able to share this, but I have hard copies for everybody and the electronic version. So the 5 votes that came before the electorate, one was in the past, the charter only permitted up to 4 votes for town council candidates. As you know, there's always 6 spaces available every 2 years in a municipal election for the town council. Is it 2 years? Yes, every 2 years. And the charter only allowed up to 4 votes. So in some cases, in fact, the next year in 2017, we actually had 7 candidates running for town council. So just imagine if you still had the original charter, which was up to 4 votes, you could only vote for 4, even though there were 6 seats that were available. So that change in the charter, which passed by the electorate, enabled us, the voters, to vote for up to 6 candidates in the town council. That was number one. The second was the Board of Finance chair would be selected from among its regular members. And as you probably know, since its inception, the board chair was the first selectman. And when we were reviewing that, it had nothing to do with the sitting first selectman. It was really about best practices and the fact that it is an appointed board, not an elected board. We made a proposal that let the electorate decide. Is this something that the Board of Finance the chairman should be elected from among its members? And I'll just, on those 2 particular votes, just because those were the 2 biggest, but I'll comment on the others. On the first one, up to 6 votes for the town council, 8,410 votes were cast. 68% were in favor of going up to 6 votes, 32% voted against. And just for reference, that 8,400 votes, that was a presidential election in 2016. There were 10,730 votes for president. So just giving you a sense, we were at about 78% of all the voters who voted for president also took their time out to vote for these 5 votes. Just also that same election for the 125th representative, the number of votes voted, and Tom O'Day, of course, won that race, 7,618. So not everybody votes for every role, every candidate, or even but we were pretty pleased with the amount of turnout that we had on this referendum. On the second one, the Board of Finance should actually, the second referendum, the Board of Finance should not have to be real estate taxpayers. So the charter as it stands today says no other board or commission requires this, but that the members of the Board of Finance must also be real owners of real estate and therefore paying taxes. We weren't sure about how this would come out, but the electorate, hands down, more than 2/3 said, no, they must be real estate taxpayers. So that was the only one that was voted down, and by a very strong margin. The third one was about the Board of Selectmen chair. This was a bit controversial. The entire Board of Finance came up to the town council, up to the commission as well, and said, nope, we're not in favor of that. We believe that the Board of Finance should be chaired by the first selectman. The electors thought otherwise, and as Dave had mentioned, 61% actually voted that it should be voted from among the boards, the members of the board.
I'm going to put a little addendum to
Please.
that because there was a rationale, which if you weren't involved with the Board of Finance and the composition and the process, the first selectman who's elected prepares the budget and sends it to the Board of Finance. Also appoints the members of the Board of Finance. So there was no inherent check and balance in the leadership and who was sitting on the Board of Finance. And that's what came out of all of our research as to how boards of finance are structured across the state.
Exactly.
The unfortunate part of that was that a number of people viewed that as a sort of a direct attack on the sitting first selectman rather than the position. And, you know, you can tell people till you're blue in the face that it's not the person. But there are a couple of things we discussed where there was exactly one person impacted by the conversation. And in this case, that was the then first selectman. So that was awkward. I think they got over it.
And it's working well.
It's working very well. There's two other votes on the referendum. One was just updating the charter. So we didn't have the audit committee, for instance, on there, or the ethics board, or conservation. Inland wetlands, which has been around for a long, long time, was never on the charter. So those were updated, added and updated. There's a couple that are not on the charter right now, as an example. Utilities Commission, for instance, that those were relatively new at the time. As is the Housing Commission, Affordable Housing Commission. And the last one was just some changes, taking out the words stenography, things that really needed updates throughout the charter. And you'll see it's all redlined there for you when you look through it. So any questions on sort of that was the.
Yes, Jen.
Quick question, just out of curiosity, what does it mean the town attorney wasn't in the?
There was no
charter?
listing about what the role of the town attorney in the charter, so we added that.
Okay.
I think one of the things, back to Eric's comment earlier, the charter has an element of being like a constitution. And by putting these commissions in the charter, or by not putting them in, as the case may be, you create an air of permanence or potentially temporary status. If they're only by ordinance, they can disappear rather quickly. If they're in the charter, they can't.
You have to open it up to change it.
Some copies, by the way, of the red line product that you guys developed. You want them?
And it's also on your
It's on your
portals.
tablet.
It is on, yeah.
Yeah.
The red line's on your tablet.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Just there's a link there.
If you hit that link for, the report,
Yeah.
the link has
Has it, yeah.
everything in there. Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it back to Dave, just talk about looking ahead. And Dave,
Yeah.
in terms of timeline?
My computer printer treated me rather badly and cut off the right side of that. So thank you, Kathleen. Penny mentioned earlier, we started, the official start point was actually in September. And I think that the point of this conversation is to have you all get some sense of whether you want to pursue further. If you do, because of the way the state statutes read, it would be very desirable to have in the September town council meeting, the approval of creation of a commission, followed by an immediate, and probably even before that approval, have fairly well sorted out who you think the members might be. And then immediately get them cranked up, swear them in October, the next meeting, approve that appointment, and tell them to get to work, because the research part of this takes some time. And if you don't allow enough time, you're going to get shabby research. And then the discussions back and forth happened, throughout that period, starting in December, but especially starting in January more, through March. And then by April, we had made the decisions that we thought were appropriate, and a draft report was created and given to the town council. And now we're back into this state mandated, you have 45 days to do this, and then the commission had 15 days to do this, and it's all very technical. But basically, in order to get all of that done in, before the summer and everybody loses track of the town, you want to follow that process, and that allows you to get it on the ballot in November.
Question, how many changes are not numbers, but were there a lot of changes when you gave the draft to the town council, or was that just
No.
pretty
Not a
much?
lot of changes. It's in the report specifically, but one was, for instance, the addition of the Conservation Commission to the charter.
The actual process, which is, specified, is you give it to town council can come back and ask for changes. The Charter Revision Commission can say, no, we don't agree. Or yes, thank you, we agree. And it goes back to the town council for approval. You can blow the whole thing out of the water. I mean, if the Charter Revision Commission can give you a report and you can say, no, we're not doing that, that's fine.
But didn't you just say that the Charter Review Commission can disregard that?
Ultimately, you have to approve it. So you get a preliminary draft, you say, I'd like to change this. The commission says yes or no to that and hands you back their final report.
Right.
Now it's in your hands. Charter Commission is done. And it's in your hands to decide, do you accept that? Do you accept part of it? And once you've made those decisions, then you know, educate the electorate and plan for a vote, assuming there's at least something that you accepted. Last go round, 100% was accepted after that initial bounce back.
So one vote that the town council actually decided amongst themselves in terms of was, should we just put all these changes to one vote on the ballot? So will you accept what the Charter Revision Commission has put together? And here are just, you know, a brief description of what those, they decided to break, the town council decided to break those up into the 5 votes. So that's one example of sort of the back and forth.
Charter Review Commission accepted it? I was just curious how it goes with that back and forth, because we did the POCD and it had different.
And that came from the research we had done all across the state when we had charter revision commissions. How many issues do you put on for a vote? I remember Stanford had something like 12, and you could have an issue that would be a really hot issue that could then kind of, you know, influence the voter's mind and not pay any attention to the other one. So you want to be really careful about what is important to be changed and make sure it's worded correctly, not, you know, a yes vote really means no, and, you know, those sorts of things. So that's why we limited it to the 5 issues.
And you remember, it was on the back of the ballot. So, and you didn't want it to be tiny print. So it's the size of the ballot matters, how many votes matter, and the substance matters as well.
And just to follow up on what Kim was saying and clarify, so, but I'm the impression I'm getting is that, but those kinds of decisions are town councils, like how it will appear on the ballot. That's not you guys. I mean, it's not the commission.
It was collaborative, but the decision belongs to the town council as to whether the town council could have decided to lump those 5 things together and say up or down on the whole report.
Wording too on the.
We worked together on that with the town clerk.
Collaborative. I think we made suggestions, you know, and
The town clerk.
And with the
actually.
town clerk.
yeah.
So is the proposal to do this in 2026? This is when it would come to the electorate?
Yes.
Or the vote would be 2026, but you'd
2026.
start the process just about now. The summer, you start thinking about it in terms of the commission members. And then, as Dave recommended, really get going in earnest in September, October.
So that would be, there's not a local election that year, right? Is
No,
there
it's
some
it's
election?
State.
It's
Oh,
state
it's
election.
state. So how do we expect, I don't know what the turnout is in the state. I was just curious. I mean, you said
So
Tom got 7,000
assuming your
votes.
question, so the presidential, this was in 2016, as I mentioned, 10,700 votes. 2 years later in 2018, which was both municipal, no, it was just state, excuse me, was 69% of total voters, whereas the presidential was 80% of total voters.
Because 26 is midterms, it's going to be, right? So should be
There'll be a good
some
turnout, I
passion for
imagine,
that.
yes.
yeah.
Janet.
Whose responsibility is it to make sure the electorate understands the wording? Because it's complicated.
It is.
Yeah.
The answer is Mike Dinan.
He's not here.
He left already. Yeah.
If you
He
see
heard
the-
enough of this 10 years ago.
We put out a lot of
Yeah, there-
press
We
releases.
sent a mailing out.
Yeah,
Yes.
there was a lot of
You have
work
that,
put
actually.
into that, Janet. You know,
And I think the League of Women Voters might have done.
Right, okay.
Because I remember getting some information.
and the advertiser, Greg was plugging one thing at a time, kind of every week. He had a different one of these questions and really dug into it. And that was, you know, frankly, that was a more thorough discussion of the issues than New Canaanite was a little briefer on that in regard that.
So there's a lot of publicity.
No offense
Yeah.
intended to anybody here, just an observation.
And that document that Mike, you had held up, that went out to everybody as well. So that was printed on newspaper basically, and that went out. So.
But there isn't necessarily a mandate to change the charter, right? I mean, is there a mandate to form the commission, for us to form a commission, for the commission to then go out and see if there are, or could we decide, I'm just being hypothetical here, could we decide as a body we don't think there's any pressing issue to.
Yes,
open
and
the
that's,
charter in 10 years. Is
that's
that
how this,
allowable?
that's how this reads, is
Okay.
that at least every decade, and by November 8th of 2026,
Hmm.
the council is to study this and decide whether or not there are issues or an issue worthy of bringing it to the public, at which point you decide to form a commission.
And that's in the charter, correct? What you're bringing, that was my same question, Hillary, and that's what I had sent to Kathleen, like, was it a state mandate that we had to do this, or it's in the charter to consider it, and we can either do it or not? Is that
I think
General
it's,
statute starts up here.
general statute? But then the charter.
Chapter
spells
99,
that.
yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, our perspective on that was kind of it's good governance to take a hard look at these things. It's, you know, in the world as rapidly as things change, it's not unrealistic to think that some decisions that were made 10 years ago may no longer sound like the right choices, or some things need further review. We didn't spend, you know, I was going to get into it later, but we didn't spend a lot of time, frankly, on term limits. We spent a lot of time on Board of Finance issues. And, you know, I don't know whether the term limits issue would cause any changes to be made, but I've heard some rumblings about the fact that there are term limits for the audit committee. There are no term limits for you all. There are no term limits for other commissions. There are no term limits in the selectman's office. Is that okay? I'm not trying to take a position at all on that, just to say it is the sort of thing that I think deserves some thought and, you know, arguably a reason why somebody might want to do some homework. And 10 years is a long time. We didn't do tons of homework on that subject. 10 years is a long time. You might feel like you ought to do that.
And another big issue, which 10 years ago wasn't receiving as much attention as if you look across the state is receiving some attention, is whether or not the structure of your government has a first selectman, which is an operational head, and you then have a general manager, or however you want to term it, COO, that actually takes care of all the day-to-day decisions. I think Darien does, Wilton does. And so as those things get further studied, there perhaps have been some changes over the past decade that really underscore that this is a better structure. Is the town clerk elected or appointed? Is the same thing with the treasurer. So there, a lot of it in this day and age with the advantages of technology and communications ease, shall I say, between people and boards, the world may be different a decade later from the past.
Jennifer.
I just had a sort of minor question, but just curious. So just reading through this, you know, your 16-month timeline. So you have in there legal counsel and professional secretarial staff, and then somewhere else in the deck, you said that there's a conflict of interest in having it be the town's attorneys. Like,
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, who pay, like, is there then a budget line? And then you're talking about like sending this out to everybody in the town, sending out a mailer. I'm just curious how that.
We
was the
don't
cost for it?
necessarily, we didn't need a lot of support from the town attorney. We needed some. The problem with the town attorney situation was simply town attorney's basically hired by the first selectman. Now start dabbling with the powers of the first selectman. Is he beholden to the commission or is he beholden to the first select? How about, I mean, the theory of our was as much as possible, we don't want to have a conflict of interest and we don't want the appearance of a conflict of interest. That was part of why we had on these study teams, 1R and 1D as much as possible. I don't think it made a nickel's worth of difference, but somebody looking in from the outside might have been offended if there were 2 Ds on this and 2 Rs on that.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know. I really don't, but it was cleaner that way.
But you just presumably have to have like a budget. line
There
for
would
this
be a
at the
budget
charter.
need,
Yeah.
Jan. There would be a budget need.
We also had a professional scribe for our minutes because we wanted everybody on the commission to be paying attention to what was being said as opposed to writing minutes.
And now you have AI, so
Hmm?
you have an AI assistant. You could do that now.
Yeah, right. Well, as I
Yeah.
said, times have changed
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
decade, so the way we did it might not be, germane to
Mhm.
today's world.
Tom. So just to
Wrap it up.
frame the goal of this, what we're doing tonight, just want to remind people, to start the commission process, we need 2/3 of the council members to affirmatively vote to do that. And so what hopefully we'll do tonight is to get a good sense of, do we want it or not? And that's going to be based not so much on the technical process that's involved here, but what are the issues that are likely to come up? And do we think those are important? And so you've got a good start. You raised several of those already, but if you could continue to do that, I think it would be helpful.
2 pages of issues
Well,
is probably.
Where we're taking a vote tonight, is that?
no,
Oh, okay. That's what Tom just said. That's what I was trying to
No,
understand.
I think you said an indication. I mean, we've done straw polls before. We've done, everybody has said where their head is.
Because of the state rules, you don't want to take a vote tonight.
Right.
Because then you'll end up with a special
The clock.
election. You start the clock. You don't want to start the clock until September.
Thank you for clarifying that. Very technical.
So as just
Yeah.
a quick couple of ones. So as we described, changing the charter last time for going from voting up to 4 votes for the town council went up to 6. There's also an interesting twist in how the selectmen votes are cast. And so if 2 people are running for first selectman, who sits on the board can be decided by the number of votes that the losing candidate for selectman gets. And if that losing candidate actually has more votes than the other 2 candidates who are running for selectman, they can knock somebody off. And so just that discussion and how it works in other municipalities and so forth, and do we have it right or should it be changed? That's worthy of discussion. We did not get into that other than a brief
Or do
conversation.
you run for the position?
Right.
You are running for the.
If you lose the first
selectman or
selectman,
the
that's it.
Republican or that's it.
Yeah,
No
that's not it.
sliding into.
To the second
more
race,
right.
right?
I think if you go back, maybe it's 20 years, the Republican Party dominated the voting in this town to the extent that it was a virtual certainty that the Republican candidate would win first selectman, which then leaves you with the question of, if you're a Democrat, do you want to run? I mean, especially, do you want to run if it's win or lose? If it's, I lose and I can bump down to being on the board of selectmen, I might be willing to, throw my hat in the ring, but otherwise, yeah, I'm going to lose. I mean, I totally know I'm going to lose. So why am I bothering to do this? And then you may not end up with the best candidates in that circumstance. Now, I think that the electorate has become more balanced than it was 20 years ago in terms of party affiliation. So that subject is, I'm not going to say it's gone, but it is probably a less serious issue than it was then. Talk about it. I mean, that's what a commission would do, would be to talk about that. And I think they should. I don't know that they should change anything, but I think they should talk about it.
So one item for the town council is, as you know, and you go through your budget process, you can't increase, right? So that's another question.
No.
Should there be, it's a question. I didn't say there was an answer to it. Should there be?
No, Kathleen, there is an answer to it. Statute doesn't allow it.
Oh, for town council? Oh, is that right?
Yeah, you
State
can't.
statute. Okay.
State statute
Well, there's
says you
another-
can't do it. We didn't know that at the beginning, but
That's right.
You-
You're
you-
right
you-
about that. Right. But there's some other things that the town council should consider about the budget process as you go through that now. And some of them are listed here as well. So those are kinds of things that we're and then there are ones, as we said, once you go through and you review what other municipalities have gone through, then you come back and debate those, et cetera. So we got a lot of great information from people that are just citizens who were sleuthing and doing some good work and came back to us with their recommendations. So
I have a question for you. How much did you take into consideration FOIA and the way that number
question.
of candidates are distributed to different boards, commissions, committees?
So great question. We weren't subcommittees, we're study teams. And so we were very specific about that, and having good guidance from legal counsel is also recommended. So the study teams, but then when the study teams came back and reported out their findings, those were all in public meetings. They were all noticed, minutes were taken. So we covered any issue regarding FOIA for
I
those.
wasn't clear enough on my
Sorry.
question. What I'm talking about is boards and commissions. How much did you look into the number of members in each as it relates to FOIA? And if you don't understand,
I do
explain it
understand what you're
further.
saying. Right. So one question was, and it didn't come up as this might be something going forward, but how many selectmen should you have on the Board of Selectmen as an example, members? And right now, as you know, it's 3, and some have 5, other towns have 5. And so that's would be a question that you would consider for this coming charter, potentially.
And part of the reason, just to give an example, is when the Board of Selectmen meets, the smaller party doesn't get the information or the communication that they could have gotten if there were 5, because there wouldn't be a quorum if.
So if you have 5 under state statutes, 4 can represent one party. So you would have to make an additional change in the charter if you wanted a 3-2 balance.
Right.
That permits somebody, so for instance, the minority party, whatever that would be, it would be those 2 people could meet without generating a FOIA problem. And the other 3 can also meet as they do in caucus. So there's that would have to be worked out.
Did you consider that at all during the press?
Well, we did talk about it a little bit, not in great depth, but the issue was presented, and the question was, is it broken today? And the input we got was, no, not really. It's working. And that was coming from the minority party saying, yeah, they thought it was okay, that they were able to work things out. Now, I don't know if that stays true, if that was very much a personal observation, but at that point, that, you know, we didn't get any feedback that it was broken. It was awkward sometimes, but mostly it was better. And in the view of the people and the feedback we got, it was the lesser of the evils, at least. Because
there's no evil.
Yeah, we have met the
But no,
enemy, and he is us.
we didn't,
right?
at that stage 10 years ago, it wasn't an issue. Has it been an issue since then? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any other issues that?
What, for the public,
Large cost items, I'm sorry, Kim.
oh, sorry, the public hearings, what was the engagement like from the public?
Much as they are now. You know, you have a couple of people who are very interested, and they'll turn up and they listen, and they'll offer their feedback, and we'd have public comments initially. But it's pretty, you know, it's just small, I would say. But we did reach out through different communities and different organizations, League, Women Voters. We publicized all the time. So I think we were pretty good in terms of getting the word out. I mean, just as testament to the fact that as many voters came and actually did their homework and voted. So I feel pretty good about that.
Okay,
Do you
thanks.
remember what the budget was for publicizing the changes? Because there were quite a few mailers.
We can certainly research that.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
know,
remember.
I don't either.
I don't know how we
Uh,
ever got the bill, frankly.
Well, the bill didn't really come to the Charter
Oh.
Commission, it came to the town, but we did spend money we did have a FOIA charge against us, as you may recall. And we had to hire outside counsel. We had ended up in Hartford in a hearing that's sort of like going to a courtroom, you know, sworn testimony and all that. And we won. We got what, you know, we thought we had done was proper, and the hearing officer agreed that it was. So,
But
but it cost some money and it cost a lot of time and angst, and it was not a particularly happy moment in my life personally, nor Penny's, but
No, but I was just more concerned with what would be a good budget number to request in order to move this forward.
Scan for the
Okay,
numbers 10 years
outside
ago.
of legal, because that falls into a different category.
yeah.
It's de minimis, I would say.
I think most of it is just what Mike had a minute ago, that that newspaper that he was holding.
Okay, any other questions, comments? This was, I thought, really fantastic discussion. Anything by anybody else?
One small
Yeah.
technical question. The statute, the state statute says that we must consider whether to form a review commission.
No, your charter requires that, not the state.
Requires that we must consider forming a commission to review it and change it by November of 26.
No, no.
I'm
No,
curious about the
by-
start dates of
by
things.
September of this year,
2025.
because it has to get going.
Okay.
The changes would have to, I think, be,
If you wanted to get into a technical discussion, the wording in the charter says you could wait until next year to make the decision.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that you would then have to have a special election just for this purpose. Not a good idea in my
All right.
view, but
All right. Thank you.
yeah, it's at least 10 years or at the latest by this date, but we would want to do that before that date because that's right
To
around
get ready.
election day and you want it.
yeah, I mean, I think you want to start this in an odd numbered year and talk about it in the fall of that odd numbered year. At least every 10 years. You can do it more often if you want. It's, if you can find people to do it.
What wasn't included in your packets, and now I'm just thinking of it, is the 2-page listing of topics that had surfaced during our interviews with department heads of boards.
Some of it's there, but-
You don't have 2 pages of it.
I do.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
Well, it's summarized in various ways, but pretty much of it's.
No,
there.
every single thing, I think one was left off. It was
oh, okay,
relevant.
all right. I got it.
The size of the commission that was appointed, was that a workable size? Because I think either the charter or the statute or both say it can be between 5 and 15, and then
Yes.
there's a certain, you have to do a majority minority rule and you can only have a certain number of electors. But did you find that the 9 to 10 person
Yes.
size
I-
was adequate or too
I-
big or?
I thought it worked very well. We had enough people to split up these 2-person study teams and go out and, by and large, they didn't, we didn't overwhelm them with the amount of work they had to do. So there were enough people to go do that work. And then in the meetings, I mean, you're obviously closely familiar with what it takes with 12 people. We had basically, the 9-10 kind of thing, and that was fine. I think we had good discussions and, and an ability to let everybody, speak as much as they wanted to and not stay there all night to get it done. So, I would encourage you to think about that size, give or take 1 maybe, but
Rita.
Who
Hold
decides
on, hold
that?
on, Kim. Rita, is your hand up?
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a follow-up question I think we should ask first because mine's a little different.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I
Kim.
just wanted to get your answer. Who decides how many are on the commission? The town council? Okay, thank you.
Rita.
It's more of a comment. I know you're positioning it as we had an equal number of, or not equal, but a certain number of Rs and Ds. The only thing I want to say is, as we're thinking about this, independents make up the majority right now. And so when we think about the makeup and being very representative, I just think it's something to keep in mind in terms of the criteria of who should be on the
Great
commission.
point, Rita. Great point. Absolutely. Tom.
Yeah, I think Dave's absolutely right that we can't vote tonight. Binding vote is not the time because that would open up bind us to a process. However, especially this notion about how we structure the commission, I think it would be useful to have a little sense, straw poll. Are people, leaning toward moving ahead with this because then we'd have some, we certainly don't want to wait till September to start thinking about who would staff this commission. So it would give us a little more time if we had a sense of the council as to whether you want to.
You're saying generally speaking, should we consider actually constituting a commission if this is the right time to
Well, not
consider?
a formal vote, a non-binding.
Yeah, no, I
stuff.
just a general sense of things, yes.
Yeah,
So, Christina.
So if I may, I think that first we would have to have the meetings within ourselves and town council to decide what topics should be discussed and perhaps research, because we have the responsibility of doing basically the outline to provide to you.
No,
No,
you don't.
no,
Not that you couldn't provide it.
you're
but
welcome
We didn't
to.
start with
Yeah.
that at all.
No.
We started with a commission and a blank sheet of paper. And
So
we,
the town council did not give you any direction whatsoever.
In the interviews.
It seems to
Oh,
me, just based
right.
on what they've said, is that our first thing is decide, do we want to open up? And then if so, picking the people
Members.
to be on it, but we don't throw out topics.
We
Was
had-
done.
You actually can.
we interviewed everybody on the council, but we didn't start with a list from the council of things to talk about. Each council member had the opportunity to inject that information into the process.
I just remember historically, the town council having a discussion of whether to do it or not and what things could be changed. So we would have an idea as to what we feel works or doesn't work. As we appoint people that are not, other than the two people, for example, that were in office, they don't have the insight that we have in terms of what works and what doesn't. And perhaps it has to be something of, whether it's a 50-50 or a larger committee that addresses the points of what doesn't. Let me explain. You do it through the questions. You ask everybody what works, what doesn't, and then you summarize it into coming up with, should this be a question or not? We need to have that first in terms of taking the responsibility of opening the charter responsibly as to what our expectations are.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a great presentation and it's very comprehensive. I'd like some time to dig into the links a little bit more, but I definitely think it sounds like a good idea. But I think, Christina, I don't know if what you're saying is what you were saying, but that you want to have a separate discussion amongst the council members at another time to see if we want to do this or not at another time, because that's kind of what I'm thinking.
No, I'm thinking that we have to have the meetings. I don't think that we should just project, okay, let's start a committee and think of names. I think we have to have discussion among ourselves what we feel works and doesn't. And then take it one step further and take a vote if we feel confident enough that that is the right move. I don't want to jump ahead and say yes or no.
Yeah, I think we're both saying the same thing, that we want to discuss it further.
We have to have a discussion about,
Next month, you amongst yourselves, be
Right.
thinking of topics. Jot them down when you're standing,
Certainly can straw poll next month. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
The question is,
go.
Christina, is that if we were to come up with a list of things that we want the commission to study, those topics won't necessarily survive the commission process.
Right.
They can develop their own and they can.
They are the
reject-
primary authors of this process. They're the movers and shakers in this process.
It seems to me that anybody who were to be on a proposed commission would start by looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
So in a sense, they'd have 2 pages of issues at least that were considered last time that maybe they ought to look at again. And then they start interviewing us and we each have our input. Seems like that would be pretty
And the.
thorough
Yeah.
way to do it.
I think I understand what you're saying. It's a bit circular, right? It's like we need to identify some issues in order to determine whether we should do this or not. And then we circle back.
Yeah.
My concern is if we get too, I don't want us to get bogged down in the validity of issues that we might, I don't know that we should speak or it's necessary for us to, as a council, come to some conclusion and say, here are our recommendations, now go and do whatever you're gonna do. So I just don't want us to get bogged down in that detail of debating whether something is worthy of the whole town council forwarding it to a commission. If you feel like there are things, it could be individual votes about whether to open the charter. And there could be things that you think are important, things that I think are important, we bring it to the commission. But I do have concerns about having to have this sort of minority or majority push of recommended issues. That's my only concern.
Right, because we don't come up with a list and say to the Charter Review Commission,
I mean,
this is what we want.
we
Well,
can,
no, hold on,
could
let me,
bog
let me-
down
let
in
me- let me
it.
finish.
We
let
could
me
get
finish,
bogged
let me finish. We don't give them a list of 15 things to say, here's what we want changed, go through your process, make sure it gets changed and bring me back the 15 new amendments and we're voting yes. That's not how this process works, because like Tom said, they're the primary driver and author of this thing. So I 100% agree how you just kind of encapsulated all of that, because you're right. Because we will go down, the rabbit
down that
hole.
path.
Well, I want this, and I want that. And that's why we should open up the commission, the charter to review. That's what we don't want to happen. So.
No, but we can give it to them as these are suggestions that
Yeah.
we're making, and it's up to them to research it and
I'm
come
not,
up with a
yeah, I'm not
final
saying that we
interview.
don't do that.
Did interview
but
each one of you
My
Hillary's
individually.
point
concern
is
that
correct.
Too many
we
people
would
talking
sit
at
here.
once.
My concern is that we will take up a lot of time in meetings amongst ourselves debating what we should present as the list of issues to the commission, where they're going to interview us each individually anyway. So that's the time that you can go and push your case for, and it's a public meeting. So you can say, as a town council member, I think this would make our lives easier. That's my take on it. You can caucus with your fellow Republicans and present something, but I think presenting a list of issues as a board that might not be unanimous is a little, because then what do I do as an individual when they come and interview me? I just think it gets bogged down in detail that we don't need to pursue.
And just to point on that, all of the Board of Finance came forward with that this is our group position on whether the first selectman should be chairman. We didn't take that. We interviewed each candidate, each member of the Board of Finance, and we would, the commission, whoever that may be, should do the same thing, because you will have a different view. Let me just point out one last thing, perhaps, is that the timing is important, not so much about what you want to see potentially reviewed by the commission, but just the selecting of people took a long time. You want to interview them. You want to understand their backgrounds a little bit. How are they also participating in town, if at all? So that took it took all of, I'd say, June through August before that list was formed, and then it was voted on by the town council, and then those people were sworn in. So that's the
Okay.
biggest time
All right.
consumer.
Thank you, Kathleen. We've been at this for an hour. Is there more we want to discuss about this, or we think we got a grasp on it? I mean, I think that, it's a process that we have to determine whether we really do want to open the charter up. It's a big deal when we do that. So that's what we have, tomorrow to get that moving. And that's why I love that it's on for tomorrow. Couldn't be any more timely. So with that said, if everyone's okay, then we can move it along to the
Town council rules next month.
Yeah, well, we wrap this up. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Seriously, Penny, Dave, Kathleen, that was awesome. Really, super informative. Really, that was excellent. Okay, so let's just hit committee reports quickly. So why don't we just knock it off? We'll go one by one. Bylaws and ordinance.
I know, it's just.
So tomorrow night, we're going to consider, we're not going to take any votes. We're going to do a refresher course and to find out where we are and to talk about some major issues regarding e-bikes. And then we're going to go through the major issues that would come up if we were to revise the rules of the town council. And then we're also working with the town attorney, Hillary, and I are about developing some proposals for updating some very out-of-date, archaic provisions that actually have some constitutional law issues regarding freedom of expression. So that won't be tomorrow night, but that's in the works.
Can you send us information on that prior to the meeting? Like
Sure.
what? Yeah,
I-
okay.
I can send you some stuff now, actually.
Tom, just on that point with the rules, just procedurally wise, and
Yeah.
we got to get to that. So when are you thinking we can,
Tomorrow night.
the town council's
rule- yeah.
rules? Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood what you said.
What I'm proposing is that we talk about the 5 or 6 main issues that have been proposed. Once we because we've got actually 4 red line drafts.
Yeah.
And I can't process all that until I get some guidance on how do we want to come out on the major issues?
Got
I
it.
think we could solve that tomorrow, and then we could do a draft and then set up a meeting soon after that.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, it would be really, again, where I know we're all busy and the summer started, but it would be great if we could get to that. Do you think by the next meeting, or do you think that's a little too ambitious?
No, I think, you mean the next town council?
Yeah, I would like to have product for a vote by
We
next
definitely-
June,
we
by our
def-
June meeting.
Definitely can do that if we can get meetings scheduled.
Okay,
So-
I know it wasn't so easy.
I think
Last
if
one.
we can have a meeting in 2 more weeks, like that,
Oh, yeah.
then we've got to be efficient tomorrow night and really decide as a committee what we want to present to the full town council as far as amendments to the town council rules. And then I'm happy to take those edits and,
Yeah.
or those suggestions and edit it. But there were, like, it was very hard to sort of figure out what was the operative
Yeah.
draft amended minutes. So we kind of just we have the issues that we know we need to cover. If there's anything more, obviously you can bring it up at the bylaws and ordinances meeting.
Oh,
So we
sorry.
definitely can do that.
But yeah, we should
Yeah,
have
I
another
would,
meeting
yeah, that would
in the
be
interim.
great if,
Yep.
we could, if you guys could keep on a fast track. And I know you guys have a heavy lift, which is, you guys are awesome. To have a red line version circulated prior to our next general, so we can all look at it prior to the actual meeting. We could show up, have a motion, have a discussion, and have a vote. I think that's really what we need to serve as have as our objective. Okay.
Something for
yes.
tomorrow night, I'm on the bylaws and ordinance committee. Can we get the current proposed amendments or changes to the town council rules? Because there was some confusion over what were the changes. Or can
Right
someone
now, there's-
forward that document to us?
There's not, I mean,
Unified document.
Tom sent an email earlier today
Yeah.
to everyone that lists, or it's the agenda, actually.
I saw the agenda.
That lists the sort of major subjects that
Right.
would be subject to amendment in the town council rules. I think we have to start with the version of the town council rules that are operative now.
But I thought Christina came up with a whole
Oh, we can
amendment
share-
that we looked at, and
we-
that was what was on the table, but we're not looking at that version?
Well, that's not been on the table at the bylaws and ordinances committee yet.
Right, so that's what I thought we were gonna start with that, but
No.
you're saying we're gonna start with something else.
To be honest, I don't even know what that is because it was a document that several people put input on. And it went through several iterations and there were many drafts floating around, which was part of the confusion.
Well, but you should have clarified and requested the final copy, but that was between what I wrote with Mike and the attorney.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let me interject. Look, I don't think we need to get bogged down. The fact is that I think we have proposed edits to the rules, but I think we don't have a unified red line version. So to me, I mean, you handle your committee how you handle it. That's the whole point of it, is take the existing rules and say, and if you
Yeah.
just go right through it again, and whatever your discussion is, you have it, and you create one unified red line document that gets circulated to the town council. Here it is. Be prepared to vote on June 21st, whatever.
And not
That's all.
4 versions of it, one.
Right, exactly. So you guys run it the way you guys want to run it. Okay.
Where are we tomorrow?
Hillary.
Tomorrow night in the boardroom.
so it's in person. It's not Zoom.
It's hybrid.
It's hybrid one.
It's hybrid.
Okay.
Fair enough. Education. Anybody? Nothing? It's okay if you don't have anything. It's totally fine. Finance and government. Anything, Eric, Hillary? No? Okay.
Nothing yet. We're gonna get with the schools.
Yeah. Health and, I'll make it quick at the end of this thing. Health and Human Services.
Sorry to say I did a whole report, but I don't have to give it.
Well, hit your highlights. Go ahead.
How much time do I have? 2 minutes. Okay. Well,
30
I mean,
seconds.
all right, so.
Wait, is that typical, like
What?
multi-page report? that you're
No,
doing?
these are extra
Oh, okay.
copies that I'm gonna hand.
Why
out.
don't you hit
Yeah,
the
I'm only
highlights
kidding.
and you could circulate
Okay,
it on
The
email?
reason why it's a little bit longer, Janet, I mean, we didn't do like March, April and May, but I'll just try to go through it quickly just so that you all know. And it was helpful for me to do this. So, what? No, you said, oh
No,
no.
I said go.
Oh, okay. In March, there was a think tank meeting of the Health and Human Services Commissioner. That was very interesting. And they were focusing on the behavioral health survey. And one of the big things that was discussed is 1/3 of the respondents from the survey didn't know where to get help. compared to national averages, that's a good number, but for New Canaan, we always want to do better. So that was a huge topic of discussion, what we need to do about it. Do we need to have programs? Do we need to have a fact sheet of where to physically get resource, to tell people where to get resources? Should there be pathways to finding therapists and processes that to put into place? So they talked about having focus groups, and they also want to get a youth survey. That's something that I reached out to Brian Lutzy about today, because they wanted to be through the schools, but it's not clear what's going to happen with that. But so that's pending. We all know the director of health resigned. Jen Eielson resigned in April. I want to thank Jen for her service to our town, especially during COVID, and then all of the open source document, what was it called that she did?
OpenGov.
Thank you, OpenGov, that was great. So Gino Gagnon took over as interim director. And then a new director was hired named Amy Lahaney, who was the DOH director in Monroe. She's going to take over on June 12th. And everything's going well in the Department of Health. I have a whole bunch of things that they've been doing, but I will just say for everyone that has kids and dogs and goes out for walks in Waveney or anywhere, tick activity is up. There was 24 ticks turned in, 7 came back with Lyme, and 2 came back with additional diseases. So I asked for an update on that today. I don't know how many more they've gotten. So that was in the month of May. But that, the meeting was in the beginning of May, so I don't know how many they've come up with. Donation link is up on the Human Services page. So far, they've gotten $1,500 donated. I think it's a lot more by now because that meeting was a while ago. Zoombucks is establishing a foundation based on the money they raise at Caffeine and Carburetors that they're going to be contributing to residents that need car repairs. So if their tire, whether something happens with the car, between $1,000 and $1,500 per car repair is going to be available to people that need it. And the New Canaan Community Foundation will hold the funds for that. One of the commissioners found, or they came upon $4,700 that was used for telehealth. They want to use that to do their own survey of seniors. So I asked how many seniors are in town. Is about 20% of our population, so about 4,000 seniors. They're going to try to survey those seniors like they did with the behavioral health survey to see what are their needs and how can they make, I guess, our offerings more robust.
What organization is doing this?
The Health and Human Services Commission, Jim Lisher is heading it up. The commission is, and Jim is doing it. He formed a subcommittee, and they're going to work on it together. Okay, New Canaan Cares presented at this meeting. I don't know if anyone went to the Chris Herron talk. That was amazing. I saw him in 2017, saw him again this time. He talked to the high schoolers, and then he talked to the public at night at the library. And that that started a lot of conversations in families and talking about addiction and things like that. New Canaan Cares did a vaping talk at SAC. 60 people came. It was about mostly, I guess, students, 6th and 8th graders, which I think is great. The Silver Hill program has changed its name. Notice I said Silver Hill. It's not urgent assessment anymore. It's called Silver Hill Assessment Program. And they dropped that name to make people feel like it was a more friendly process, I guess, and less of an emergency. The other good thing is we're not paying fully for it anymore. Westport's come in and Weston's come in. So we get 16 slots. Well, there's 16 slots per month overall. Westport gets 2, Weston gets 1, and we get the rest. So that's just a sharing, cost sharing model, which I think is important. On the radar of, I'm almost done, of New Canaan Cares is cannabis use in edibles. Basically, the THC content in cannabis in edibles, well, I don't know if edibles existed in the 70s, but it's a lot higher than it used to be. There's another product that they're concerned about called Zin, which is a nicotine product. It's a pouch that kids are just using and no one knows that they're using it, as well as the ways of taking in cannabis. So it's kind of a hidden thing that's happening that they want to make parents more aware of, watching out for all that stuff. One last thing that I found out about was something called AI chatbots, which I brought to their attention. I don't know if anyone knows about this, but there's platforms out there with no age restrictions where kids can pick their chat box For example, they could pick quote unquote an abusive boyfriend as their chatbot. So that's something that New Canaan Care is going to be taking up. So that basically looking at your kids' phones and understanding that there's these programs out there that they can become best friends with that you may not know about and may not be particularly healthy for them. One last thing, and I'll stop at that. You all know that they're doing Narcan training. So anyone that wants to come to that, anyone in the public, it's June 3rd, 9:30 to 10:30. Sign up will be on the CARES website. And that's it. Thank you for your patience.
Thank
Thank you, Kim. Rita, do you have a question or your hands
I
up?
do
there?
know really a question. First of all, thanks. That was so thorough, Kim, and that was great. I'm just curious, do we track not just the Lyme, like the ticks that come back with Lyme, but do we track Lyme cases? Do we know how many cases of Lyme disease we have in New Canaan?
That's a great question, Rita. I don't know if, for confidentiality reasons, if people necessarily turn in their diagnosis to the health department, but I could certainly ask if we have a sense of the prevalence in the community.
Yeah, if I'm just curious if it's increasing. I mean, that was alarming what you just, I think. I don't, maybe not, maybe it's not alarming, but it seemed, I've been hearing a lot about tick, like different diseases. It's not just Lyme now.
Yeah, there's two, they were able to pick up 2 other diseases in 2 of the ticks. So maybe that's a program that we could suggest that they have, because it's a pressing issue in the Northeast and especially here. So maybe they could do an education talk on that.
It's interesting. Thank you.
All right, infrastructure.
Okay, capital projects, there's demolition is coming up with the metal, I think it's the incinerator building. It's below the swap shop down the hill. And paving is about to start. The bids went out. They're expecting to be back somewhere around 2 weeks. The major roads that are going to be paved that are 10 years old is Marvin Ridge, White Oak Shade, and North Wilton Road. There's micro thin and crack seal overlay that is going to be worked on. 29 roads were just approved by the Board of Selectmen to be worked on. The contracts were signed. There's a tour going on of the police department, and the tours seem to be booking up too fast.
They're all booked. I tried.
So I've requested that a special tour for town council and the Board of
Nice.
Finance.
Thank you. That's
Thank
excellent.
you.
Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, we'll ask. Everbridge notification of major projects is going to go up, notifying the residents of the roads that are going to be affected. And lastly, the sidewalks South Road on South Avenue going to Farm Road from town is going to be the first section. And then the second section is Farm Road to the Merritt Parkway. And it's going to connect somehow to the new pathway that's being created along the Merritt Parkway on the southbound side. The Waveney Conservancy is working with a special Heritage Landscapes to design something, and that's going to be at their cost, and they're working on that now to see how they can combine the two into one. And that's it. And then the carriage barn, and we all heard about it.
Excellent report. Thank you. Let's move to land use, recreation, conservation. Penny and Jennifer, anything?
The rec department is fully engaged in making sure that their summer programs are all organized and so forth. And Capo Field is looking really smart. And I don't know how many of you people went to the ribbon cutting, but it's
Yeah,
quite an
it's
asset.
spectacular.
And-
It's awesome.
I'll just add 2 quick things. So obviously everybody knows this, but just officially, Robin Bates Mason is no longer going to be Conservation Commission. She's going to be the awesome Executive Director of the Land Trust. What a great choice. And I think that takes effect June 10th. And I think at that point, hopefully the next meeting, I can announce who the new commissioner is for the conservation. And I just wanted to add, maybe it's a nice bookend to this whole meeting, but in terms of Park and Rec, like so tragically, Keith Ritchie was working just up until like this week on this great group of people they put together. They toured Kiwanis, and I had notes from Tim Klimple gave me already identifying, issues, trying to come up with what are the pressing issues and a master plan. And so that's just going to be a great hole there. And hopefully they'll come up with someone to step into his shoes. But it was something he was just recently working on. So that's unfortunate, like a setback for Kiwanis planning.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for saying that, Jennifer, for sure. Public safety, the only thing I have actually is the police building, which actually I had a tour. Chairman has his privileges, but I did. It's just absolutely phenomenal, and I think all of us on town council, it's a great legacy for us that we supported the funding and approving it, because it is spectacular. It is a 21st century modern law enforcement facility that will stand the test of time. So it's a really fantastic operation that they have developed there. So
They got it done.
yeah, no, and by the way, there was a quip about being chairman. I'm on the police building committee, so I was at our most recent our recent committee meeting. We had a walkthrough, so it's awesome. Okay, and then just real quick with fire department, they're having their fundraising dinner on June 6th at Waveney. So I think many of us or all of us have received a invitation. If you can go, great. Anyway, so that's all I have for public safety, affordable housing.
Quickly, Bob Strong just got appointed to take the place of John Goodwin. And so he's getting caught up. We are trying to figure out how to use the budget allocation that we got and what the scope of a consultant would be. We've identified a few in-town sites that could be potential for an 100% or some measure to get us to meet this, to satisfy 830G in the next go round. So we're moving along and considering, sites and places to do that. And yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
I have a question. What sites, can you share any of them?
Yeah, we've discussed them in public meetings, so
Yes.
it's totally fine to share. We've looked at, we're looking mostly at we're looking at only town-owned property at this point, mostly parking lots like the Richmond Hill lot. Where else are we looking? The Locust Avenue lot, maybe the lumberyard. So we've identified a few, and it's a matter, like we've sort of done it on Google Earth and tried to come up with parking. We have to replace the parking because, as we all know, parking is at a premium here. So we would have to deck parking, which is really expensive. And the Riverview development helps us. We can sort of look at it on a smaller scale, like not as big as, certainly not as big as Canaan Parish because we don't have that land available. But just trying to get the right fit and the right size, but also have parking still for town. So Morse Court was a possibility. Which Morse Court, if you notice, I only noticed this after we started discussing it. Really, it has like an uphill. So there is actually some more headroom to do below ground parking or below grade parking if we wanted to. But then it also that's kind of tough in that area. So we're looking at everything and trying to determine whether we want to propose being more nimble in the real estate market, like if duplexes come up around town. There were the two contiguous duplexes that were on the market briefly on like Park and Bank Street. That I think a developer bought, but we want to be able to take those opportunities. So we're trying to figure out how to do that best.
Thank you.
Deanna's really supportive and been really helpful, which has been great. So I think we're on the right path.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Last thing here for committees, just because I have to mention it. We spoke a lot about our budget season and getting together with departments through our coordinate committees. It's end of May, June, July is here, coming up summer. B&O is excellent setting meetings up, just doing their normal business, and infrastructure, I know, had a meeting. I just urge you now, think about meeting department heads over the course of the next X amount of months before it's late summer and then it's early startup next year. And then we get, kind of the song and dance that there's a million other things to do. And it's tough to get a hold of, to schedule a committee meeting to discuss budgets with the department. So like I said, we all said we would commit to having earlier discussions with our department heads through our committee. So start thinking about that now so you can kind of absorb that and have the department heads absorb that type of a discussion with us, throughout the summer into, early startup of next year. So we don't head into, it's now the time in November where the departments are starting to look at their budgets and they don't have time for us. And then we don't get to talk to them until sometime late February. Well, let's try to stay way ahead of the curve now on that process, even though, we really are just coming off the budget season. But let's do more than just pay lip service to that. Penny.
But part of that discussion, when we were talking to the Board of Education about their cut, was the recognition that Selectmen, Board of Finance, Town Council, and Board of Education need to work together in the May, June start time. And so we need to form those committees and get going on it.
Yeah, so I again, as I've always envisioned the committee process since I've taken over as chairman, is chair and vice chair, get together, just talk and start reaching out to, reach out to the selectmen, reach out to Board of Finance liaisons. You guys are in control of your committees. Move forward, be active as you can possibly on that to right to Penny's point. Reach out to your Board of Finance liaison, get that discussion going, and then go chat with the Board of Selectmen, and then go chat with get moving with the department heads. Move that process forward. You're all in charge of your committee, so move forward on that.
Well, the second one of that is the study of the library and the relationship of the town, capital T, taxpayer, and the library.
Yeah, and I think that you've made a great proposal on what to
So
do.
I don't know whether Whaley and Doug Stewart are going to assume responsibility for moving that forward. Is that a request that comes from you?
Well, so our committee, where does the library fall within our committee?
Finance, government.
Finance and government.
Exactly. So I think through a finance and government discussion, I mean, it's a little unique because we have representation on a library board. So to me, in fact, that's a great point, Penny, because I love what you said during budget season about, that particular issue and this role. And as Tom said, do we need them? If so, what's their role? We need to define that. I think that's a great subject for finance to take up, I think, as a condition precedent to moving forward with really any budget discussion as it relates to the library. So I leave that up to finance to start having that discussion, and then it will come to us as a larger discussion on what's the point of that liaison and what's their role, because I think we do need to come full circle on that
I
and
thought
cap
we
it.
were taking responsibility for bringing the two bodies together.
I don't know that that's true. I think
I talked to them and they are willing to assume that responsibility.
Okay, then, and if that's fine, I'd leave it to finance and government committee to move forward. You guys were great on that, so move forward on it. Again, I want all of our committees to be active and then bring it up, call me up before our next big, saying, generally speaking, reach out to me and say, hey, Mike, we want to get this onto our full agenda. It's time, finance and government had this discussion. Let's get it on our agenda. I mean, that's how it works. So that's what we got to diffuse out our responsibilities and roles. So when we have a general meeting, it's not 4 hours. We've had it vetted out. Like tomorrow night, I think it's going to be a great discussion. So let's really be active as we possibly can on that rather than just have a 2-hour meeting, or a 3-hour meeting on, once a month. That's the whole point. We should be working, quite honestly, all month long, to the extent we can balance it against our lives. Okay.
They're actually, wait a
Can I
minute,
make a comment?
Yes. So 2 comments, Penny and then Christina.
how many people are coming to march in the parade?
Ah.
And I have the banner.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I intend on being there. Is anyone going? You have 2, 3, 4 maybe, so we can coordinate.
Okay,
If-
so I will arrive with the banner.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Christina.
I just wanted to say that in moving forward with the subcommittee meetings, I proposed to the department to just set a meeting date monthly where we would just meet. So I'm not chasing anybody for a time and a date. It will be on a set date. It might help everybody to consider that in order to simplify the process. The other thing is I discussed with Mike a couple of weeks back that I think it would be healthy for us to have a wrap-up meeting to discuss what worked and what didn't during the budget process and what and how we can improve it. because I'm sure everybody has had different experiences, and if we put our heads together and discuss it, we might come up with a solution.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think maybe either a June or July meeting, we could probably have that because we should likely have a lighter load. I have to chat with the first selectman and Tucker about what our agenda will be looking like on the general matter for the next two meetings. But I know I definitely would love to get bylaws voted on. At our next meeting. But yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. With that said, can you get a motion to adjourn? Second, everybody, have a great night.
Good night.
All right.